Hi, this is Bruce with the Bowski Studio, and I just want to go over a couple things from my last video. Had a couple comments when I worked on the painting about how I worked from photographs, how I made sure the subject was within certain parameters. So I'm going to do probably be a couple videos. I'm not sure. I'm going to start out with a couple techniques I use to paint structural elements, houses, urban scenes, that sort of thing. This segment is going to be talking about the grid method, and let's get started. And I want to thank everyone for joining me, and give it a thumbs up if you enjoy it, and pass it along if to other artists that can use it. Apparently there's not a lot of information on this idea, how to do this. So thanks for joining me. Okay, the method we're going to work on using today is the grid method. And I usually use this process only for studio painting. Obviously, it'd be a little time consuming outdoors. And what I do is, of course, for the sake of the video that I'm working on now, for ease of use and that sort of thing, I'm working with the monitor screen, which you can use. The technique I'm going to show you will work on a monitor as well as on a printed out photograph. So what we need to get is, a lot of people have them laying around in their house, a sheet protector. It's just a piece of plastic that you put sheets in. I have mine already prepped ahead a little bit, but has a little pocket in it. Normally you have little rings to put in a binder, but I cut those off. And this is going to be what we create our grid on. And for this demonstration purpose, you can make the grids really any size. I find that a 1-inch square works great, and the size of this, like, you can crop this off to whatever measurement you want. The point is, depending on how big you want the finished painting to be, this 1 inch is going to be your starting point. So you can probably see, I've marked along here, 1 inch equals, ½ inch equals, and I can scale that up however I want. I can say 1 inch equals 2. So if I do that, then I continue on and break it down. ½ inch equals 1, and so on. So that'll give me increments to work with for proportioning things on the canvas. Now what we're going to do is I'll show you the next step. So, and of course this was with Sharpie. And you could probably, if you want to make little notes on your image or whatever, you could probably take a dry erase marker onto this plastic, I don't know. But I use a permanent marker, of course, for the grid part. And let me show you what I do next. Okay, now what we're going to do, I also suggest, is making 2 L-shaped pieces of board of equal size. You can make them a little bit wider, it doesn't matter. I had this laying around. And this is your composition finder. And if you look, I'm going to try to see how you have markings on here. I've pre-marked this for my own purposes for 6 by 8 panel, 6 by 8, 8 by 10, 10 by 6. I mean, you can do all kinds of compositions here. And what I've done is I've taken a little Velcro and stuck it to the back for ease, so that when I find something, I can just kind of say I want an 8 by 10. I put the 10 mark on this piece onto the 8 there. Mark up the hash marks. Know how well the camera's getting this. And the 10 to the 8 down there. And that's an 8 by 10 scale. And now I can use that on my photograph or on my monitor to find a composition. You can also, even though this is smaller, get an approximation where we want our composition on this piece. Let's say we want to do this. Chop off this house a little bit over here because it looks a little funny. Maybe do that. I like that window there. Make your compositional decisions. And you want about approximately there. Now, before we had taken this standard sheet protector and marked it with a grid, you can also use any kind of clear plastic. This is a page from a portfolio. You see the holes. Got the same 1 inch grid. You can do any size grid or have multiple sheets with different size grids, whichever. Because some composition is going to be more complicated than others. So maybe for a complicated subject, you may, like a lot of buildings with windows, you may want a smaller square in there. But for our demonstration purposes, you want to be putting this grid on. Make sure you line it up with the verticals in the photograph. And if the photograph is a little off kilter, you'll need to fix that first. Or if it's a printout version, just tilt the paper so that this grid is parallel with any vertical lines. Line it up approximately where we wanted our composition. Got my verticals matched up, and just take a little tape and tack it to your monitor, this piece of plastic. Just do this, and again, ensuring that our verticals are straight, taping the other corner over here. And because the sheet kind of touches the table a little bit, I'm going to go ahead and tack pull this taut, pull it a little tight, and do this. And I'm not going to leave this here, this tape, for this demonstration video. I normally would have blue painter's tape, low tack, laying around the studio for masking off different things, and just to make sure you don't leave any gum residue on your monitor screen. But it's okay. It's just going to be short term here for this experiment. I mean this demo. So now I'm going to show you, obviously this looks a little distracting, the background that you don't need, so I'll show you how to fix that. Okay, as you can see, all I did was I took some strips of paper, in this case a little bit of poster board I had laying around, but just as long as it's just plain white, and you can see how I blocked out those two edges. Now what we want to do is we want to determine, so all I did was, obviously we want to cut off right about there. So I'm going to cut off another strip because we want to block off this side. And then we'll do another piece where I want to take off some of the foreground. So we just take a little tape. Even clear tape probably be better in case you had to tape across parts of the. So you see I'm cropping in on a line of the grid where I want the composition to end. And then we do the same on the bottom. Just cutting off strips. And keep these strips, just have them in a little place so you don't always have to cut new ones. And I want to see where I want the bottom of the composition. We can tell that looks fine. And there's one line there. And if it's not perfect, like, oh, I want a little bit more, but it becomes half a square, you can still calculate that onto your canvas panel by drawing out the grid on your canvas panel or canvas. But I'm going to go ahead for demonstration purposes and end it right on another straight line. Get your tape. Tape it up. And that is our composition. Now comes the fun that some people might think confusing, but this is where you do your math now, okay? And this is just bowing out just a bit. There we go. Now you got to figure out, well, what do I want these squares to equal? Now, here's the interesting thing that's only going to take time as you as a painter. It's very important, and I'm still learning it myself with certain subjects. When you got to put certain information, like you're painting a window, you know, and you know how easy it is for a certain size object to get a certain amount of detail in there. So with that said, you know, you got to approximate, like say I made each 1 inch square only 2 inches. Well, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 squares. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 on the 9 squares going vertical. So if I was to say 10 squares and each square being 2 inches, that equals 20 inches across. Now we take that same 2, because we're working with a square grid. You can also do rectangular. I find it easier to do square grid. 2 times 9 is 18. So the canvas is going to be, or your painting support is going to be 20 by 18. So with that said, you can see that, say, these windows right in here take up approximately, just shy of 2 squares. That's 4 inches. And there's some information in there. Obviously, you're not going to noodle every little line in the shutter and that sort of thing, but just take a ruler and go 4 inches. And wow, I mean, I'm not very good at detail yet, so man, I want to make that a little bigger so that I can have room to work on those details, because I feel you got to decide, yes, I think those are important. Other times you may think the whole element of the painting is important. So those are decisions that before you calculate the size. So now if we say I want that 1 inch to equal 3 inches, then of course it's going to be 30 by 27. So now you got 6 inches to work in. So you say, well, okay, I can work with that. It gives you 2 extra inches to put in information you may want to. So those are things that you have to kind of calculate, and everything's going to be a little different. No one artist can tell you what size you should make it, but that's how you would work it. So what I do now is I would maybe have a little piece of paper tape there for this, again, for this demo. I'm just writing it on there. Let's say I want to do that. I want to make 1 square, 1 inch, because they're 1 inch square, equals 3 inches. Okay? And we know that then the finished size is going to be 30 by 27. So I'm going to go ahead and write that in there. 30 horizontal by 27 vertical. Sorry, it's kind of hard to write all weird like that. So now we can take that 1 inch and break it down. So that means a 1/2 inch distance equals 1 1/2 inches. And a 1/4 inch equals 3/4 of an inch. So you see where I'm going with this. You're scaling up your photograph or scaling it down, whichever. And by deciding that factor, and then all you're going to do is create that same grid onto your painting support, which I'm not going to, that's pretty cut and dry. You just copy this grid onto your painting support. And then what I like to do I like to get the base, like the big houses and everything. I work on the very obvious things immediately. So that would be like the roof lines. So on your, let's pretend like this is the painting support. So you would say, okay, 3 squares over is the point of the roof. Let's do it this way, sorry. So 1 square down, 3 squares over. I would put a little dot on my panel. Then we come down here. 1, 2, 3, 4 is the bottom of the roof. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I would put a little mark to mark the bottom of the edge of the roof. And then I go, okay. You can be exact and measure it with a ruler, like once you've broken down your squares on your panel. But I just approximate. You can now use your brush and say, well, the ending point of the roof is about in the middle. So then you go 2nd row over, and 1, 2, 3, 4 down. 2nd row over, 1, 2, 3, 4, and right in the middle put a dot. So now you got these almost like you're connecting the dots. Now you would just take a straight edge, or you're freehand it and draw your line to mimic the pitch of the roof. And the same with the other side. And then that's how I would continue creating this line. So if it was me, I would be doing roof lines, peaks, roof, roof, roof. And it doesn't need to be done in this order, but I'm not going to start with doors and windows. I'm going to start with big things, because part of it too is you got to decide how detailed. Am I doing an architectural rendering, or am I doing a painting? So I just want the basic bones, because usually when I crop a scene, mostly like working in the studio and having time to really reflect on it as opposed to plain error. I'm kind of more intuitive. You need to decide your composition, and it's very critical to me how certain parts relate to others. Like maybe this part equals, it doesn't have to be this scientific, but hey, that equals one of these, equals that, two of these equal that space, or maybe, dividing it up like that. So you don't have all equal shapes is one way to plan out your composition. I just have after years of painting, have a pretty good eye for finding fairly good compositions. Now the key too is going to be, after you get it drawn in with your basic bones, then you can go in, like say these windows, and you can see it's going to help you determine your perspective lines. Now you want to look at your photo reference first, because sometimes depending on how close you are to your subject or what kind of lens you have on the camera, it could be distortion. And sometimes if I feel it's too distorted, like too sharp an angle, it just looks funny, I'll make it to where it looks right to me. No one's going to know. And as long as it looks 3D and believable. I'm not going to sit and draw. You could. It takes a heck of a lot of time that I don't, my personality doesn't allow it. Is doing the whole perspective drawing. I've studied some basic perspective in the past and things of that nature. And I know enough to be dangerous, as they say. And so then that's when you would use these squares to find out where your windows lie. In other areas, yeah, I can just guesstimate, oh, this is about a quarter of the width of that square. I'm just going to block that in. And it gives you some freedom. And then there's going to be other elements that, unless you took another photo, like, of course, houses need chimneys and that sort of thing, but, it's okay to fib. Like right here, I don't know if you can see it. There's a chimney with a cast shadow. There's what I call tangents. This shadow connects right to the end of the chimney, right at the roof line. I would take that chimney out, just continue the roof over, just take out that shadow, and put the chimney like on the other side of the house. No one's going to know. And I would actually raise it up a bit, just fib a little bit, so you have that breaking the tree line. Or actually take that back, because now I'm looking over here, it would be in line with that chimney. Keep it the same height, and just put it on the other side of the roof, and then lower the tree line so you see the chimney poke into the sky a little bit. So you have that light against dark, dark against light. So that's the kind of stuff you need to do once you transfer it to your canvas or panel. And when I transfer it over, I kind of do it with a very light pencil. And then when I get it all done, I'll go back over that with some whatever you want, like a pale purple line or pale blue line with paint. And then certain things when you're recreating a grid on the other side is, the reason to do it light is when you're done, you want to erase any other pencil lines you're not going to be using. And I know like certain areas, like if I was transferring this to my panel, I know basically almost the first two square lines, almost to the left-hand side. I don't even really need to hardly put those in there, just mostly this. And if you felt you needed more information, take this grid sheet, maybe for temporary use because you don't want to ruin your master copy, put another piece of plastic over, tape it down, and then make smaller squares so you can even get more accurate with your drawing. So I hope this helped. And then of course you're going to start blocking in your painting and painting the painting. This is more about the technique I would use in the studio to paint structures, and this would apply to any urban scene, or this is a residential street, but you get the idea. And we'll give you that form and fit it in with the confines of your panel. Okay, I hope you found that useful, and I've decided I am going to do this in a couple segments. Next segment is going to be on how I would do this, and I might even sketch out just a basic preliminary line drawing with paint. If I was doing this in plein air, how would I go about trying to achieve that? And it's a little trickier in plein air, obviously. You got time constraints, and that's where I test my being intuitive. And like the video you saw, just the one I just posted a couple days ago, this December 2016, is that I worked from a monitor to mimic how I'd be painting from life, just to keep my skills up while it's freezing cold here in Maine, like -3. And I wanted to test. Eventually, I'll get good about even doing this, like super freehand, which you could do. You might have to modify some lines to, but we'll go over that in the next segment. And I want to thank everybody for their comments, and please subscribe if you're not a subscriber to look for more useful information for painting in the studio and outdoors. And this is a Habowski Studio saying goodbye, and take care.